requirements of the council on this criteria. That's a brief summary on the VFM. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rajesh and Katie. Are there any questions for Katie or Rajesh before we? Okay, Alan.
Yes, so we have regular catch-ups with the finance team and they're really helpful in answering our queries. So we are happy with the progress being made and but hope we can meet the February deadline.
Yes, absolutely. So I think we've got quite a good working relationship with Forvis Mazars. It's quite positive. Certainly responses and queries are dealt with if they're from our perspective. And we endeavour to get everything over to them as soon as possible so we can meet these deadlines. And I think the position that we're currently in with the backstop dates and progress of the rebuilding of assurance, I think it isn't reflective of the hard work that's gone in from both sides. So yeah, we are happy with the progress. I think it is just, you know, a point to be noted that actually the position that we are in because of the backstop and the backlog that we face isn't reflective of the progress made. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Alan, can you use your mic, please? Thank you.
Is that the right button? On the DSG, just to note that the government made the announcement in the budget last week that it's now going to go to consultation on a solution to the DSG deficits, which is welcome news, I think, for Ealing. Just on the enforcement notice, which, as you said, was really the main substantive issue in the VFM report. Is it literally now a question of once the housing regulator is happy, you're happy in that area, that would allow you to issue a clean audit next year if the enforcement notice is lifted, or are there other further tests you would need to do?
Yes, if the enforcement notice is lifted, so we'll be happy to remove this, provided there are no other concerns in the housing area which came to our attention while doing our VFM work for the next year.
Thank you. Any further questions? Great. Thank you. Over to you, Suresh.
So page 23, right at the bottom, we had a little section on rebuilding assurance, which essentially confirmed what we said at the previous or the earlier meeting when we brought your audit strategy memorandum about the fact that we would end up disclaiming this year's accounts. I should say we will issue a detailed report on the audit, so you will, as a committee, receive a written report which reports any material misstatements in those accounts, any amendments that have been made by the council as a result of our audit. Essentially, you will get a detailed report as you would do if we did the full audit and gave you an opinion that wasn't disclaimed. It's just my opinion will be disclaimed. So I know that's not ideal, but it does give you some assurance that there's nothing materially misstated in the accounts that you'll be asked to approve at that time. The rebuild and assurance piece, as Emma alluded to, has proven to be far more complicated and challenging for all audit suppliers, to the extent that yesterday the Minister for Local Government and Homelessness, I think is her title now, wrote to all local authorities outlining that position nationally. There are expected to be more disclaimed opinions this year than was originally envisaged 6 months ago, because the process for rebuilding assurance is far more complicated than was anticipated. What that means for Ealing is still uncertain, because it's been challenging enough to try and rebuild assurance where there's only been 1 year disclaimed, where there's obviously 3. That is just a multiple of those kind of complexities. I'm hopeful that I can have a more informed conversation with Emma and Emily before Christmas on how we can start doing some rebuilding work. I think we'd like to do that once we've gone past the February deadline for these accounts, to start looking at what we can do. And it might be we do chunks of work over the next 2-3 years. I can't envisage a situation where we'll do it all in one year. So your journey from being disclaimed to unqualified is probably going to take 4 or 5 years, which, as Emma mentioned about the contract extension, is kind of an indication of how long the rebuilding assurance is expected to take. So again, whilst no consolation, there are other authorities in a similar situation. There's more London boroughs going to be receiving disclaimed opinions for their 24-25 accounts than was originally envisaged. And yeah, we'll be doing our best to work with Emma and Emily to try and move things forward. And I would say that, having the fact that we've been able to produce a report on the accounts themselves, hopefully is a step in the right direction. The value for money work is being reported today. So it feels like we're making a couple of steps forward and a couple of steps back, but hopefully we're moving in the right direction. But happy to take any questions on that rebuild and assurance piece.
Thank you, Suresh. Are there any questions? Do you have any idea as to when we might have some guidance on rebuilding insurance?
I think we're, as a firm, trying to provide guidance internally before Christmas. We've had an initial guidance, which is essentially showing how complicated it is. We're now trying to work out how to then roll that forward for where we've got more than 1 year disclaimed. Hence the reason why I'm hoping to have that conversation with Emma and Emily before Christmas.
Okay, thank you, Suresh. Yes, did you want to add something? Nikki, you'll be pleased to know we're moving your item up so you can get some of your evening back. Yeah, so we'll let Mike introduce. Over to you, Mike. Thank you to the Mazars team for attending today. And thank you for all the hard work that you're doing for us.
You just tell us what page as well.
Item 9, page 79.
Quarterly risk management update.
Thanks. So this is the corporate risk register on page 79 of the papers. There were no changes since Q1. Last time we talked about the financial risk uncertainty. The new guidance was literally issued after the CLT discussion and before was issued too late really to do any updates, but I've got a meeting with Emily to discuss that, and it remains a watching brief to how that's going to impact, but it is in all likelihood going to reduce next time it comes to committee. The cyber risk is a hot topic for obvious reasons. I did meet with our cyber lead in ICT to have a discussion. Obviously, there's an awareness of the issue. The details of the attack haven't actually been shared, although there's a kind of general acknowledgement of what's happened. There's been guidance issued across the council. We have a cyber team who track and monitor this risk and have continued to track that all the way through. And there's some guidance coming from MHCLG, is it this week, about the sort of measures and things that we should have as an authority. some of the mitigations that we have on the risk register have actually now been confirmed to be in place. But it's a constant kind of, as soon as you take the next step, they take the next step. Things like AI are being used to do phishing attacks and things like that. So these things are more sophisticated. So the risk will remain. We did consider whether scoring needed to change, and actually felt that that it will probably maintain, but we're not denying that this is an important risk and something that we need to continue to watch and track. But we have had those discussions as a result of what's happened in the neighbouring borough. I'm going to pass you to Nikki, who's going to talk about. Sorry, go on.
Just mention something on the cyber side. I know it's a minor point, but it's just been happening over the last few days. But when I log on to Teams, for example, although it's supposed to take you to the multiple authentication, what happens is it sort of bypasses that, and I don't have to fill in the number. And I just thought that's very strange, and I just thought I probably should have alerted to IT as well, but it's only been the last few days, and it just seems to bypass a step. So we're all worrying about these sort of things. I just wonder how you get those sort of things, those gremlins in the system, checked out.
I'm not going to attempt to answer that because I'm not the expert. I think I know why. But I'll mention it to ICT colleagues and make sure that it's not a bug in the system, that it is something that we're managing, if that makes sense. Sorry, over to Nikki, who's going to talk about, as requested at the last committee, the departmental risk management and how that kind of feeds into this, and then we'll take any questions on the risk register or any questions for Nikki.
Great, thanks. Sorry, Nikki, can you use your mic? Thank you.
There we go. Sorry. Okay, right. So let me take you through the slides, and then we can pick up from there. So in terms of our overarching framework around risk within housing environment, we manage risk in line with the corporate guidance and the template. So risks and impacts are identified, and they're allocated owners within that. We have mitigations in place that are planned alongside implementation dates. Risks are assessed according to likelihood and impact, and ratings are determined for each of the risks before implementing and after implementing the mitigating actions. Risk takes place at a service level, so it's all the way through departmental and at directorate level with myself, and risks are reported at each level and determined through their risk rating about whether they escalate up to the next level. Key risks with high residual risk ratings then will go through to the corporate risk register, and you'll have seen that obviously here in terms of the housing specific risks. And there's also an overarching housing environment risk register, which draws from operational and project areas as well, and where appropriate is aligned by theme, because obviously housing environment covers quite a broad area. So just in terms of the process, I've just sort of documented that here for you to give you a visual. Obviously, we're looking at the service-based project, programme and departmental areas on a monthly basis, formally through each of those formal mechanisms. And then that escalates up to the formal quarterly review of the risk register. But there are ongoing broader discussions around housing and the risks around housing that are taken at, during that cycle as well. So it's not just left to a quarterly discussion and one and done. In terms of risk identification, so these can come through multiple sources. So it may come through some of our performance information. We may be picking it up through our budget position and our financial planning, in particular around the financial viability of the housing revenue account or the overspend in homelessness that we're seeing at the moment, which is linked to the increasing demand. Our projects and programs could flag identify serious risks. So our stock condition survey, which is really positive, but could have picked up some serious risks that we may have needed to address quite quickly. But, you know, linking back to the external auditors, our risks around building safety are fairly significant at the moment, but, you know, we've got improved controls and oversight on those to make sure that we can manage those through. That plays into regulatory requirements. So we've got increasingly more and more regulators and more regulatory requirements in housing. I was just talking to our backbenchers, briefing them on the outcome of our inspection before I came here, and we've probably got about another 5 areas. There's 3 levels of AWAB's law coming out. There's a competency and conduct standard. We're going to be regulated by the heat for our heat networks, and so there is a lot going on around the regulatory requirement space, and therefore again we need to identify our risk in terms of being able to meet those regulatory requirements. And then around our HR and data, our workforce is key, obviously, to being able to deliver our service, and recruitment and retention of a skilled and competent workforce, again, remains a risk for us and something that we need to keep an eye on, because that could create a problem in our, you know, in meeting our regulatory requirements if we don't have the right staff in place. So they're the sort of areas that we'll start to, you know, identify risks from, and they'll flow through. We've also just recently implemented a 3-line of defence model. So as we're strengthening our governance and assurance framework in housing, we're thinking we're learning and evolving in terms of a 3-line of defence. So we've submitted as part of one of our audits a performance management framework. And within that, we're building this approach as well, which was sort of in implementation at the moment and was acknowledged by the regulator of social housing during our inspection. So current high areas of risk and some of the areas that we're mitigating. So these are probably the top 5 in my mind at the moment. So financial sustainability of the HRA has been challenging over the years. If you over the last couple of years, if you've looked at the quarterly finance position on that, it's swung quite a bit. There's been quite a bit of unexpected costs, which links back again to where the auditors were talking. So we've had to put emergency works and waking watches into tower blocks, and that's obviously created unbudgeted expenditure that's quite significant. So we're constantly keeping an eye in terms of financial sustainability of the HRA. Demand for services and costs exceeding budget. So this probably talks more to the homelessness side of things. So we know across London, across the country, there's obviously an increasing challenging area around meeting needs for housing. So we, again, you know, constantly, we meet very regularly on the homelessness performance indicators. So we'll look at key ones on a weekly basis. We do a monthly high risk budget monitoring. So the housing demand budget and the HRA budgets are both included in that process and given full scrutiny through with the finance director and the cabinet member. So there's quite a bit of quite a few mitigations in place, but there still remains a significant amount of residual risk around homelessness. Staff recruitment and retention. So I've mentioned that it is, you know, we are, you know, our workforce are you know, ultimately our service, and you know, it's really important that we've got a skilled and competent and resilient workforce. And we've been focusing over the last 18 months really about how we do that. So I've restructured the entire housing service. We've brought in stability at the senior leadership and the management levels. We've realigned services. And now we're very much supporting staff that have come in that are new to help them to embed into the housing area. So we're supporting the heads of service, we're supporting the middle managers, and we've got specific technical training and in place for people within building safety and compliance where they don't necessarily have the full technical qualifications at the moment. Compliance is another area. It's a reducing area of risk for us now. We went through the inspection. The outcome of that was that we got a C2 grading, which says there were some weaknesses within the service. So we're not in the serious failings category of a C3 or a C4. And that's a reflection of the work that we've done around improving our compliance in our stock. You can't get a C2 if you're not considered to be safe around health and safety. And then data accuracy and availability, again, an improving area. But it does remain sort of fundamental to our services, the same as our workforce. So we've got a housing IT and digital programme that brings together the council's 27 systems that cover housing that are not currently integrated and don't have master data management. So we are putting together the master data management, we are building the APIs between the systems, and we are looking at upgrading our main housing system so that it is far more integrated, and there is less room for error in terms of reconciling across different systems where that's not happening in an automated way. So I think in summary, what I'd say is these are probably the 5 ongoing areas of risk across housing. They're all reducing, which is positive at the moment, and the outcome from the recent inspection, I think, again, in terms of the HRA, the social housing stock, gives us comfort that we've got plans. They've been fully scrutinised over a 6-month period. We submitted 700 documents to the regulator of social housing. They have a memorandum of understanding with the housing ombudsman and with the building safety regulator, and so I think I can say that we've had a fair amount of scrutiny in this space, and with the outcome that we have some weaknesses is definitely showing a direction of improvement for the housing service. Okay.
Thank you, Nikki. Are there any questions for Nikki? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. So you're probably aware that we've had a few meetings where we've sort of focused a bit on housing and what's going on, and you've touched on the software integration, and I'm pleased to hear that's going ahead. Do you any idea when that's likely to be complete and up and running fully?
So the housing IT and digital programme is an 18-month programme at the moment. Yeah, we'll obviously make improvements as we go. We're not waiting for 18 months to then switch a light, and obviously it all changes. We are literally improving our master data management. We're improving the records, making sure that they're as robust as they can be before we then do the upgrade and we do the integration. So it's a continual work in progress, but it's going to take 18 months for us to do that.
So when did that start?
So I think the programme's been up and running in terms of discovery and then putting the business case together for over the last year. I think a report went to Cabinet fairly recently, if not the last cycle, to award the contract and to kind of form.
So 18 months from now.
I would, yes,
Yeah.
I think it's probably a fair window to say.
Okay, another area that we've spent some time on is temporary accommodation and the sort of safety checks for temporary accommodation. How's that one going?
Yes, that's going well. So we've got in the region of 98% compliance across gas and electric across the TA stock that we've got. So we came from a period of no assurance in that space to very high levels of confidence around those 2 areas of compliance.
Okay. And the final one for me is, so it's really good to hear. We were, I think, on the briefing that you just did at 6 o'clock. The great progress that's been made, and the fact that we've been awarded C2 it is brilliant. I know that's across the board an improvement. However, that wouldn't stop there being an occasional issue of in one particular building, for example, I believe that still could be a risk for those individuals living there, and also obviously the council, reputational risk for the council. And the one that we thought we were going to talk about tonight, which we might still be talking about, was the sort of I think 2 high-rise buildings where there are concerns about fire safety. And I just wonder, are we confident that those sort of areas are now covered and we have no significant risk to life anywhere?
Yeah, so in terms of the high-rise buildings, again, we had a limited assurance audit around those. And since then, we have had a weekly tracker and close scrutiny on, one, the activity that's needed to close off the enforcement notice on Rufford Tower, which is the one you're referring to. We haven't had an enforcement notice on Morton, and we've also submitted Gainsborough, I think it is, and that we haven't had any feedback on that one. In terms of the enforcement notice, we track the actions. There is nothing there that's leading us to believe that we won't be able to meet the deadline of February 26 in terms of addressing those. And that then means that hopefully we can take the waking watch out once we've done those remediation works. It is slightly challenging in the market, so we are out there getting principal designers and principal contractors lined up to deal with the spandrel panels that we need to take off of those. And obviously we've got a short window to do that, but we are still looking like we're on target for that. Coupled with that, we are mitigating risks within all tower blocks by looking at the outstanding FRAs and any ICRs and any layered risk of multiple no access around safety. And so we've got, a laser focus on that, and we track that on a weekly basis, making sure that we're cited on anything that's in those high-rise blocks that needs to be addressed as well. So we're mitigating it through the waking watch, but also through making sure those EICRs and FRAs are all completed in a timely fashion in those blocks as well.
Thank you. Any further questions for Nikki? Of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're of course looking at this top down. We're looking at the strategic risk register, hearing from you from the point of view of a member of the Directorate Management team. How confident are you that housing managers, staff on the ground, understand their responsibilities around risk management and are feeding these issues up through the system?
Okay, so there's a few things around that. So we have a very active discussion about the risk register every month at my SLT, and that's because we know how important, how live it is in terms of the work that we're doing. My expectation is that happens at all the layers down as well, but to triangulate that, we are going back to our first line of defence. So we're doing a lot of work with our high risk areas around being assured that the first line of defence is in place. So that would include things like the risk register, include contractor meetings, include staff training and development, include looking at the data that's recorded and how it's reported and everything else. So I would hope that it will be picked up within that work. Once we've got assurance around our high risk areas for first line of defence, then we're building and evolving the second and third lines to give us more and more assurance that those things are properly and robustly in place.
Thank you. Nikki, you mentioned that you have monthly conversations about the risk in your department, and then that feeds in quarterly to the strategic risk register. Can you tell us when you last fed into the strategic risk register? Because I've noticed a few dates missing on the register.
Well, I updated a link, which I don't know which is what Mike referred to, probably about a week ago. So I don't know whether if that was after this has been published. Oh, after it was published.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could circulate them after the committee, but they've been updated. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And so you've talked about the risks are reducing but remain high. How confident are you with how effectively the risks are going down?
So I am more assured, given the rigorous process that we've been through with the regulator of social housing around all of these areas, because we've had a 3-month in-depth team assessing all of the things that we're doing in this space. We've also had a Tier 1 investigation from the Housing Ombudsman, and they've also been through all of our plans and our processes and our performance as well. So I'm feeling more confident, but there is no room for complacency in this space. We are still not a C1, we are not meeting the standard. We have some weaknesses. And we also know from the feedback from the regulator that, a lot of the improvements are quite recent, and it's really important that we embed those improvements and that we can see that sustained change, because there is a risk that actually that improvement could fall backwards if we can't sustain the change. So I feel it's a positive direction of travel. We've had that externally validated, but there is no room for complacency, and we need to continue to drive forward improvements.
Thank you, Nikki. That's reassuring. Councillor Martin, you had a question.
Just coming back on one thing. I mean, I'm talking slightly historic here, but in terms of like maybe the last 18 months. But I've attended some of the estate inspections with the team in my ward, and they look at health and safety issues. And Gainsborough Tower is an example that we went for an inspection, and there was broken pane in the lift lobby, which is a risk because it's a fire lobby. And we went back 3 months later, and they still had the broken pane. Now that might be done now because that was 6 months ago, but the one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking is the importance of making sure, you know, if things have changed, that the team are already aware of the fact that it has changed, and they don't think, well, we tried that 3 times and now we've given up reporting it. So just that sort of, just to get a feel for that sort of how you've done that, and sort of spread the message out across the whole team, so the people on the ground are aware that, you know, these sort of things will now be picked up.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Thank you. And so we spend quite a lot of time around staff engagement and communication. So I do a monthly newsletter that goes out by email, and I know a lot of our frontline staff won't access that. So we do monthly talk to sessions. We invite all of the workforce to dial into those. We record them. They can then be shared around, you know, whether it's at team talks or whether people want to look at them later down the line. And then with frontline staff, we'll be doing, you know, toolbox talks and briefings with them as well. I do know that it's not foolproof yet, and I do know there is still room for improvement, and things do get reported, and we very much encourage, you know, members, residents, tenants, leaseholders to feedback to us and tell us where things aren't being addressed when they should be. You know, so you know, please, if things aren't being picked up, let us know, because that's how we can drive that improvement through. We can pull up the contractor, we can speak to the housing officer, we can speak to the building safety officer that's responsible for that pack, and we can reset the expectation if that's not being met. So the more feedback we can get, the more we can improve things quickly. But we are disseminating that information to the workforce. We're going to do all staff housing meeting in January to pick up from the inspection and make sure again that people understand the areas of focus and where we still need to improve.
Thank you. Final opportunity for any questions? No. Okay. Thank you, Nikki, for joining us this evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay. That moves us on to Treasury Management Q2 outturn. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. So I will, I'll take the report as read, and we're just asking for Audit Committee to recommended to note the Treasury management activities and performance against targets for the period 30th of September 2025, and note the Council's investment balance of 381 million at the 30th of September 2025, of which 251 was invested with the Debt Management Office. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Emma. Any question, Alan?
I mean, I think it's largely a report for us to note this time, isn't it? It's not been an exciting period Treasury-wise, fortunately. But I think a few cycles ago it was reported to us that you've decided to invest again in local authorities when the opportunity arises. But I don't think I've seen any actual investments have gone through. Has there been any investments in that area?
Yes, absolutely right. We reconvened our investments in local authorities during the year. It was always on our counterparty list, just to sort of clarify, it was always on our counterparty list. However, we took an internal decision not to invest with local authorities off the back of some local authorities, such as Thurrock, where we were receiving quite a lot of FOIs on the basis of investing with them. However, our money in local authorities is safe. So on that basis, and interest rates are very competitive with local authority investment at the moment. Therefore, we've reinstated that. Our first investment with the local authority was in October, because we created quite a strong quite rigorous checks that we needed to put into place before we invested, just to again protect ourselves reputationally, not financially, but reputationally. And so we've put a lot of checks in place. We needed to agree those and ensure that we had them all bedded down into a very clear policy of risk. And yes, so we currently, at today's date, we currently have around 84 million with local authorities, and we will report at Q2 in February. We will report on how well that is doing, sort of interest rates against what we generally do, and our option to invest with DMO.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, thanks, Emma. Can I ask the committee to note the report? Thank you. That moves us on to the final item, item 8, progress on internal audit and investigations. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'd largely take this as read. This is agenda item 8 on page 65. Just kind of highlighting the internal audit reports completed during the period. At paragraph 5, so 3 reports were finalised just this period, which received positive opinions. On follow-ups, there are 8 outstanding recommendations, although all are in progress. Finally, highlighting the work of the investigation team. We've had positive results in identifying and preventing fraud totaling 790k for the year to date. We've recovered 9 properties, which means that they can go to individuals with a genuine need, and we've taken 5 applicants off the waiting list that prevents ultimately them getting a property they wouldn't have been entitled to. Over to you for any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Alan.
Quick one, Mike. Table on page 71, paragraph 6, shows that an additional audit has been added to the programme for this year. You may or may not be able to say very much about that, but just a quick indication of what that what area that covers. But also just to ask whether you're still happy that the plan is going to be met by the end of March.
So the additional audit was the item 16 on the list, ICT asset verification, which is work in progress, and hopefully that will come to the next committee. So it's essentially about checking that they've got these and the network and the servers on the asset register. In terms of the plan, so I think, as we said, we were out recruiting. We've successfully recruited two new members of the team. We're now having a look at where we can get to in terms of delivery of the plan and making sure that we can deliver enough to be able to give an opinion, and whether we need to buy in some from the resilience provider which we commissioned, or whether we kind of reprioritize and utilize the team to do it. So I'm confident we can do sufficient in order to get my opinion. We're looking at the plan as to whether we want to kind of deliver everything, or whether it makes sense to continue to do it in-house, or whether we want to put it out to the resilience provider, which can be quite challenging in Q4. So I think in simple terms we're on track and where we wanted to be. It's and we will deliver a sufficient part of the plan, and anything that doesn't get done by April will go into the new year, doesn't get just dropped away. We are looking at the way we plan, because I think having having moved from an outsourced provider where it's like you can deliver 10 audits at once if you need to an in-house provider, it just needs to kind of change the way we do it, which isn't necessarily for a bad thing. But, you know, for example, we started the payroll audit and there were some questions around overtime, and we're like, actually, maybe we should do payroll and overtime at the same time, whereas traditionally we would have done payroll and then overtime and overtime. So we're kind of looking at that and saying, actually, sometimes now we've got that flexibility of the in-house team, what we might be better is doing that. So we're kind of going, so I'm looking at that and going, actually, if we carry forward some of the projects from this year, we've got work that we can be commencing from the kind of April period while we set up the new plan and look at the resource and stuff. So it's not, all of this will be compliant with the global internal audit standards and best practice, but just kind of taking a little bit of a refresh and a deep breath to kind of go, this is the new team, this is the way we do stuff now. It's changed the model, and are we making best use of that? Can we be more, I hate the term agile to risks, so rather than producing an annual plan, looking at what some other authorities are doing about a kind of 6-monthly plan and taking that opportunity. So we may not deliver everything on the plan this year, but that will be a positive decision, rather than kind of going, actually, we've got to get in the resilience provider and deliver everything by the 31st of March, because that's what we set out to do. But actually, kind of refreshing that to kind of go, our intention is to do it this way. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I suppose the practical repercussion of that is that you'll be trying to plan so that if you miss audits off the plan, it will be things that you believe to be relatively low risk.
So, we're not going to drop anything from the plan. We will do it in this plan. We'll carry on until we're done. It's then looking at next year. So we've not inherited the same problems with this year's, that we actually go, right, what's our available resource when, and we kind of plan a bit more effectively so that we can, like I say, factor in timing around, because with the PwC model, we did a lot in Q3. Now we need to be as busy in Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So we're kind of saying, actually, let's let, and I'm calling it the washover. It sounds wrong now, I'm saying it out loud. Where we let the kind of audit plan creep into April, so we've got that start and that buffer and things planned in. So the team is hitting the ground running and doing the work straight away. Whereas Legacy has it, when you publish a plan in February, they're then running around trying to get audits booked in April, and it takes time, and people can't make it, can't do that. So we're sort of thinking it might give us less problems. I'm intending to bring the plan in February with details of exactly how we're going to do that, because it's quite fresh, and following the kind of successful recruitment, we feel confident we can kind of take that forward. So I'll bring kind of details on that, but kind of what I'm saying is anything that's not delivered on this plan by the 31st of March will go on to the plan automatically for next year. So we're not going to drop anything and consider it's low risk. We're going to do those first, and then we're going to be doing the planning process as normal in parallel with that, to say, right, so what we've got is February Q1 work basically agreed by audit committee. We're going to progress that, and then in July we'll bring you the plan for the rest of the year with the work for approval. So it's just, to me, about, like I say, hopefully being more agile and kind of thinking about those resources, allowing us to kind of make those decisions of actually doing payroll once and well is better than kind of going, let's do payroll this year, overtime next year and stuff. And it means one report, one hit of the service, those kind of things. So I think it's kind of the in-house team's bedded in. Now we're starting to look at that and think about how we can be the most effective. How do we kind of manage that and utilizing this period to kind of refresh that and try and do something that optimizes the new world, I suppose.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Martin.
Not so much a question really, but I'm just curious about the fraud initiatives. And so it speaks in here about National Fraud Initiative. Is this being carried out by an external body, or are we carrying some of these investigations out ourselves?
So the National Fraud Initiative is run by the Cabinet Office. It's been going for a very long time. It was previously by the Audit Commission, but that got abolished, and they recognised how important it was and found a new home for it. So all those people. So what it basically means is that a basic one, for example, is all of our payroll details go into this pot. They match it all, and if they found a Mike Pinder working for Ealing and a Mike Pinder working in another council, they go, oh, there's a match here. That doesn't mean Mike Pinder's committing fraud, but it might mean. So we then will approach that other authority, or they might approach us and go, do you have a Mike Pinder working there? And it could be that I'm part-time and therefore I could do both roles. It could be that I'm full-time, in which case there's a problem and we investigate it. So all these matches come out, they're published to us. I have an investigation team who look into all of those, ask those questions. We have prosecution powers, but which we might utilise. We have powers to recover funds if we get a prosecution. We work with HR closely, so it might be that this isn't fit for prosecution because you have to prove something beyond reasonable doubt, but for the balance of probabilities, which is the HR level of proof, that they could take disciplinary action, which may result in a disciplinary sanction. So it's kind of that we'll pass on to HR and management to deal with that. But any of the serious cases are investigated by ourselves.
Okay. So for example, like the blue badges, this system will be matching the fact that they haven't got a disability or something like that.
Blue badges is largely a match against deceased lists.
Oh,
so they take all the active blue badges against people who are known to have died, and the badge hasn't been. The badge is still active. So a lot of this is prevention measures. So what we will do is we'll write out and say, please be aware that you can't use that. We'll flag it with the team so that if somebody attempts to get a new badge, they know and they can make sure that a new badge isn't issued, and those kind of things. Which is why we usually get quite a big number on those. But it's taking a kind of stop it happening rather than kind of going out and seizing badges, that type of thing.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Great. Okay, well, that concludes the meeting. Thank you everyone for attending this evening. And our next meeting will be circulated to you by email. Thank you.